Well, hey, this is James Riley.
And Beth Riley.
And got a really great edition of our Artist Spotlight podcast series. Beth, tell us who we have.
Today we have the pleasure of speaking to the queen of glam rock and a rock and roll icon, Suzi Quatro.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing there?
We're doing good out here. We're in Memphis. It's starting to finally thaw out a little bit. I think we had record 10, 11 days of below freezing temperatures and ice and snow, so we're not...
I know. I got a sister in Texas. That's what she said. It's the funniest thing that you just said was you were in Memphis, and I just finished playing my cover of Trouble.
Oh, wow.
Is that weird? I've never played that before, and I just played it, and okay.
That's
weirder things have happened. Yeah, that's real funny.
That's very cool. Well, we're going to talk about your new project, The Devil in Me, in a little bit, but first, like I said, we're in Memphis, so we got to have some Elvis questions first. Now, let's go back to, as seeing Elvis, your little girl, seeing him on the Ed Sullivan Show. Describe that.
I was 5.5. He was doing Don't Be Cruel. And, we all grew up with Ed Sullivan. And he used to bring on something, he called it something for the youngsters at the end of the show. And it was Elvis's turn. And one of my sisters was 9 years older. She was screaming. And I was only 5.5. So I was looking at her thinking, why are you screaming? And then I looked at the television. And I went into the set, like hypnotized into the set. And a little light bulb moment, I'm going to do that. That's the honest to God's truth. At that age, didn't occur to me he was a guy and I was a little girl. I just thought, I'm going to do that.
This is what is amazing to me. Years later, you received a phone call from Graceland. You actually talked to Elvis on the phone. Tell us that, because he was asking you to come out there and you turned it down.
I did. It was my first tour in America with my English band, and I just had about, I think, maybe 3 or 4 hits, and we're just on tour for the first time. 1974, we were in Memphis. All Shook Up was skirting the charts there, my version of it, and the phone rang, and it was his people, and all of a sudden he was on the line. So, of course, you knew he'd fall over dead. And he said, I've heard your version of All Shook Up, and I think it's the best version since my own, and I'd like to invite you to Graceland. And I just wasn't ready. Yeah. Not scared. I was not ready. So I said, I was very busy. I know I'm laughing at myself. What a jerk. But I wasn't supposed to meet him. He has been a good luck charm on my shoulder my entire career, and I think I wasn't supposed to meet him. I wouldn't have written, I don't know if you've heard or not, Singing with Angels, sure, which were recorded in Nashville with James Burton and the Jordanaires, my tribute to him. Had I met him, I wouldn't have written that song, and it needed to be written.
Sure.
So knowing how you felt about Elvis and still feel to this day, how does it make you feel to know that you have and are still influencing people, Joan Jett and others? You're now Elvis level to some people. How does that make you feel?
Well, I don't pretend that I knew I was doing what I was doing. All I was doing was sticking to me. Like I do. I'm uncompromising. I am who I am, and that's it. And I knew I was the square peg in the round hole. I always knew that. So I didn't have anybody that I could look up to, except for Elvis, to say that's what I want to do. So I had to find my own space in this world, in show business, my own niche, which is why it happened, And I didn't realize the extent until I actually watched Suzi Q, the documentary. When I was at my first premiere, I watched it on the big screen with an audience, and at that point, I just went, oh my God, did I do that? It's humbling. I had no idea. But I guess, really, it did change everything, didn't it? It just blew the door down. I didn't see the door even.
It's amazing how moments like that happen.
Yes. There is a reason, and I think if I had purposely set out with that mindset, I'm going to do what no girl has done, I don't think it would have worked. You know what I'm trying to say?
Sure.
It just had to happen naturally. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just being me. And sooner or later, that kind of person was going to break out, and I broke out.
Now, before you went solo, you were in a band called the Pleasure Seekers. Tell us about that band.
That was when I was 14, and again, the Ed Sullivan Show. We were watching the Beatles, and then we got on the phone, called our friends. Everybody's all excited. And I think it was my elder sister next to me. She said, why don't we form an all-girl band? And everybody yipped and yayed, and everybody chose an instrument. And I didn't speak up quick enough. And so I finally said, hello, what am I going to play? And my sister Patty said, you're going to play the bass. So that's how that happened. And my dad had everything in the house. We came from a musical family, so, 2 pianos, 2 different accordions. We had a harp, we had ukulele, we had guitars, we had everything. And I asked my dad if he had a bass I could use, and he gave me a 1957 Fender Precision. And I make musicians green with envy when they hear that, because that is, whether you know it or not, the Rolls Royce of bass guitars. And I got given that as my first bass.
And you still have that to this day, correct?
I do. It hangs on my wall at home. I didn't know it was Rolls Royce of bass guitars. I had no idea there were smaller basses. So it's just funny how I ended up a serious bass player and learned on the hardest one and the heaviest one. So it was, I guess it's supposed to be. It was meant to be.
I want to talk about a man, Mickey Most. What can you tell me about your relationship with him?
We have a lot in common. Bless him. I miss him every day. He is a Gemini, the same as me, so we talk till the cows come home about everything. Kind of like a father figure to me, and he believed in me. That's something I will always be grateful for. He discovered me in Detroit, brought me to England, and he believed in me. And he made it possible for my dreams to come true.
Now, thinking about like the 70s, that whole rock and roll and rockabilly revival, all of that was happening with American Graffiti, and of course, Happy Days, hugely successful. And you played Leather Tuscadero on there, and might also add, I believe you said Elvis's 68 comeback special was a inspiration for the leather look. What was that whole experience like for you?
That was great. I got a call on tour in Japan, and it was my publicist, and he said that they had seen my picture on the cover of Rolling Stone. Gary Marshall's daughter had it or something, and would I come and audition for the show? So I flew out there and auditioned, and it turned into 3 seasons. Best decision I ever made. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm still close friends with Henry and with Ron. And yeah, it was my first ever acting role, so quite thrilling to be part of that show. What an iconic show that is.
Sure. Now, you're originally from Detroit and live in the UK. What are some of the main differences between the two? Do you prefer one over the other?
Well, Detroit's my hometown, so that never leaves you. Detroit's always in my heart, and I remain a Detroit girl, even in England, even though I've been here since 71. Difference as well. Totally different. America's different than England, that's all. Everything here is just different. But I've gotten used to it. Everything's much smaller. That's the first thing that strikes you when you come over from America is the size of the roads, the size of the cars, even the milk bottles are small. So it's just everything is different. America's all about big, wide open spaces, But I've settled here, since 1971, but I'm always going to be an American in England.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Levi Dexter, just trying to understand why England in particular has such a reverence for rock and roll, rockabilly, blues, that stuff that may originated here, but we tend to kind of go on to the next thing. And he was explaining that maybe because of the United States still kind of a baby as far as like how long it's been around, and England just such a long history, they sort of revere the history. Is that something that maybe you noticed too, that maybe England and other parts of the world sort of revere some of the original roots music that came from here a little bit longer?
Yeah, probably. When you go to another country and discover their music and bring it back, you're going to hold it really close to your heart. Look, Eric Clapton, he's still playing the blues.
Sure.
They kind of like made an art form out of American music. Look at all the great players, and even the Stones started off as a blues band,
Sure.
Yeah, and it all originated in America. It's strange how that goes. And then when the British invasion happened, you had a lot of American bands imitating the British sound.
Yeah, it started imitating itself.
Yeah, it turns right round,
I said, I feel like I need to say shout out to 313. I have a lot of friends of mine in Detroit.
If you get me started on Detroit, I'm huge Motown fan because obviously that's my hometown. But so much so that I can still do all the Temptations dance routines, which if you give me a glass of wine, I go into quite easily. And I took a lot of my bass style from Jameson. He's my hero. And when you listen to my music and you listen to the backing vocals, I always do the backing vocals. And if I'm not singing them, I'm telling them what to sing. And I was such a Motown freak that I ended up usually listening not to the lead vocal, to the backing vocal. And the Motown was wonderful at that. They had some great BV parts, just great. And, I've done radio shows. I did Motown documentary, and I've been on the radio for 15 years. Motown documentary, and I did the other side of Motown, which is the white rock and roll bands. And there isn't a city in America with a better pedigree, I don't think.
You have said that your new album, The Devil in Me, is your best album so far. Why do you feel like that one's your best?
We got our feet wet with No Control, which was a huge critical success. Everybody absolutely loved it. The first time I worked with my son. When you're first working with somebody, it's just all flying. You don't know what you're doing, and you're flying by the seat of your pants. But this one, because of that, we sort of had more of a vision, more of a aim, and I was able to focus on, well, my son said he wanted to make this album as groundbreaking as my first. We had a benchmark that we set. And every song had to have a vibe, If it didn't have that vibe, it wasn't going on this album. And what my son has managed to do is to relight my Suzi Quatro fire, and I don't know how he's done it, but he's done it. I didn't know it needed to be relit, and I'm in the wonderful position of seeing myself through his eyes. So he's brought 36 years old to the table, and I've brought 70 years old experience to the table. And together, we are quite a force to be reckoned with. We're just writing such great songs. He challenges me, I challenge him. This is what we need to be doing. He's got it all in his head, the area that he wanted this to be in. So who else I don't know if you've heard the album, but who else can go from things like Get Out of Jail and The Devil in Me, the lead single, to things like I Need You Home for Christmas, My Heart and Soul. Everybody's commenting on the diversity, but also the fact that even though it's diverse, it's 1,000,000% me, and that is not an easy thing to accomplish.
Now, the title track of the album came out a few days ago, like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Is it being well received, do you think?
Huge. Oh my God, everybody I've talked to is saying to me, this is your best work. Oh, what a song. Oh, what a video. The video's fantastic. Everybody that's heard the album is absolutely loving it. So I don't even need to say it's my best work. They're saying it for me, which is even better.
Yeah, we definitely agree. I mean, the single, the album as a whole, it's interesting. That was one of the thoughts I have. This sounds like Suzi Quatro, and it's just such a great album. Start to finish.
Thank you. And it's fresh. And I do think that's what my son's brought to the table, this freshness, He's throwing riffs at me. I'm going, wow, playing them and throwing them back. It's good stuff. Really, really good stuff. I am very, very proud of this album. Very proud indeed.
This question, you may have a different answer every day and maybe a different answer later today if you listen to the record again. Do you have a current favorite track on the album?
It's so hard. Everybody's asking me that. And even when I ask my friends, what's yours? They say, we can't pick it. I would say definitely The Devil in Me, because it's all about my mom, what she used to say to me. Singing-wise, I loved singing My Heart and Soul. Just loved singing it. Bass playing-wise, Hey Queenie is one of my best ever bass lines. I hope I don't have to do that live on stage. I'll never do it. And Motor City Riders holds a place in my heart because it's about Detroit.
That's very cool. Of course, we talked seeing Elvis, seeing the Beatles. Who are some of your other influences? We were talking about some of the background vocals on some of the Detroit stuff. Do you have some influences as maybe a bass player and maybe some as a vocalist?
Yeah, sure. Jamerson, the guy that played on all the 60s stuff, part of the Hit Factory, he was in the Funk Brothers that played on all the early Motown stuff. He was my absolute hero. Plus, I very much liked the bass player in Canned Heat. He was a bit of an influence. I used to really love Otis Redding. He influenced me. Lyrically, I was a Bob Dylan fanatic. Phrasing, I used to love listening to Billie Holiday. And performing, I just performed. I can't think of anybody who influenced me performance-wise. Maybe just Elvis.
Name an artist that you wish you could work with that you haven't yet. They could be living or dead.
Jeez. Yeah, they're all dead. Elvis for sure. Otis I would have loved to have worked with. Billie Holiday. Oh, would I love to have worked with her. Modern day, I would love to work with Melissa Etheridge. I'm a fan.
I am too. She's a good one.
I would like to work with her. I've got an album, with KT Tunstall. It's a work in progress, so we've done something together. So we've done a whole album together, which is great. Those are the ones that came to mind.
We talk a lot about a time machine in this household, saying we wish we had met, 20 years ago. If you could travel back to any year, any time period, what year would you pick?
I think I would go right back to 9 or 10. Okay. Just being that house that I love so much, and everything being innocent and fresh, and yet being when the street lights went on. Yeah, that I have a real thing about the house I grew up in. So, yeah, I would go back to the childhood.
Here's one that's a little tough, just because it's like, I know it would change every day for us if we had to pick. But it's been really fun to see what people come up with, talking about the Desert Island discs. If you had to pick, 3 to 5 of them, and I fully expect that you would smuggle in a couple extra. But if you had to pick 3 to 5 albums that you'd take with you.
Yeah, albums, okay. I would take Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan. I would take Running on Empty, Jackson Browne. I would take Mad Dogs and Englishmen by Otis Redding. I would take Tapestry by Carole King. I would take Harvest by Neil Young. I would take Mythical Kings and Iguanas by Dory Previn. Okay, is that enough?
Yeah, that's a great and eclectic list.
I got a lot of strange taste.
And I have to mention, you brought up Jackson Browne. That is one of my top 2 favorites. So He's
great.
Yeah.
He's really great. Yeah, I like that Running on Empty especially. I love that album, and I love Rosie. I'm going to cover that one day. I love it.
I'd love to hear that one. What is next for you? Anything else in the works for you?
I've got gigs in the book from May, and who knows, we can't even talk about it. If it happens, it happens. I don't know. All the ones that were moved from last year, that's supposed to be starting in May. I am now in the process with my son. We're working on songs for the next album already. So we got about 5 or 6 down already. So I'm in a real creative splurge. My 5th book I'm writing at the moment, and working on a movie of my life after the documentary, which just went, it was at the top of the charts for ages with that. So that made everybody want to do a movie. So we're working on that too. Yeah, I'm just writing and being creative and waiting for the gigs to start.
Now, I have to give a little bit of credit, actually all the credit, to Michael Armstrong. He's the one that orchestrated this whole thing for us, so definitely want to thank him. And also, I want to steal a quote from you that I had heard you say talking about your success with Can the Can. When it went to number 1, you had talked about being on an ego trip for about 3 days, and you remember being aware that you were going through an ego trip, and you remembered going through it and remembered coming back down to earth with a thud. I have a feeling that I'll be on an ego trip for about 3 days and then thud back down.
Well, you know what? You have to let it in when it comes in.
Yeah.
You really do. I was number 1, and, I got a little bit, and then I just laughed at myself. I looked in the mirror. I remember I sat down at the kitchen table. I don't know if it was long as 3 days. Anyway, I sat down at the kitchen table in the morning, and my ex-husband was sitting there. He was my guitar player, and he just looked at me, and he said, "Welcome back, Susie." That's cute. That cute.
Is. The Devil and Me, Suzi Quatro, coming out March 26th. Absolutely a fantastic album, and this has been so much fun talking to you.
Yeah, we definitely want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you.